So in this video here, I'm going to be helping you guys determine if two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. But before we get started, let's do some warm-up problems where we are simplifying expressions and also practice solving equations as well, because oftentimes these two types of problems get mixed up. So when you're simplifying expressions, all you're doing is using order of operations to basically combine as many like terms as possible. So in this scenario, you can see that there are numbers in front of the parentheses. So let's go ahead and distribute that. So I'm going to distribute the 4, and we also need to distribute this -7. Make sure you carry that negative sign or that minus sign with the 7 when you're distributing, or else you might mess up on your signs. So we would have 4x, 4 times 9 is 36, -7 times x equals -7x, and -7 times 3 is -21. And then we're going to combine our like terms here. So let's see what we can combine. So these x's can go together, and these numbers can go together. So we're going to combine our like terms. So 4 minus 7 is going to give us -3x, and then -36 minus 21, since they're both negatives, you're going to add the numbers, so that makes about 57. But since they're both negative, we're going to say -57, and then that there is our final answer, because we can't combine these two because they're not like terms. The other's an x and the other's a number. This one here is a little bit different, because if there's an equal sign, that automatically tells me that this is an equation. And so in this case, you are going to be trying to get x by itself, since it's saying solving and this is an equation. So you're going to do the same thing as you would if you were simplifying. You're going to try to simplify this down as the best you can. So I am going to distribute this 5 over. In this case here, like I said, the goal is to try to get this x by itself. So if I were to distribute this -5, I get -5x minus 15 plus 2. And maybe I can combine these two since they're both numbers. And so that gives me -5x minus 13 equals -18. I'm going to add over 13 to try to combine like terms here. Then -5x is now by itself, and this side here is -5. And so from here, to get rid of this -5, I have to divide by -5. So that cancels. Now if I divide -5 with -5, it becomes a +1. And there we go. We have our answer. X had to have been 1 in order for this equation to be true. All right, now that we're warmed up here, let's get into how do we find if something is parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And so if two lines are parallel, that means that their slopes are the same. So you're going to try to find that their slope, you're going to compare their slopes, and if they're the same, they're parallel. If two lines are perpendicular, then that means their slopes is opposite signs and reciprocal. Oops, I didn't mean to slash that out. And so what that means is if your slope was 1 over 2, okay, that means the slope that's perpendicular to it need to be the opposite sign, so in this case negative, and needed to be flipped. So this would have been 2 over 1, or in this case -2 if you were to reduce. So perpendiculars are basically you flip the fraction and you make it opposite signs of each other. All right, let's do some examples here. So for the first one here, notice that they give you two lines and they give you the points of the line. They don't actually give you the slope. So unfortunately, you have to find the slope first. So let's do that for line 1. So I'm going to call this M1 for the slope. And if you guys remember from last time, the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's just referring to the coordinate point. So if this was my first point and this was my second point, you're going to use the formula and plug in your numbers to get the slope. So in this case here, we have y2, -4, minus y1, -5. So that's two negatives right there. x2 minus y, x1, sorry, meant to say x1, which is 2. So in this case, 2 negatives make a positive, so this becomes a plus sign. So I'll just cross it out and make a plus sign. And then negative 4 plus 5 is positive 1. 4 minus 2 in the bottom is 2, so I get a half here. I'm going to highlight that, so I have a half. Ooh, that's a little bit thick. And now I'm going to do the second slope here. So again, I'm going to use this formula here. So now I have negative 4 minus 0 and 5 minus 3. So this would give me negative 4 over positive 2. So if I were to reduce, I would get negative 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And in this case here, I want you to take a look at these two slopes. Notice how this one's 1/2 and this one's negative 2. We can always put a number over 1, right? Negative 2 over 1 is still negative 2. So if you really look at these two answers, you'll notice that they are reciprocal, meaning they're fractions flipped, and they're opposite signs. So in this case, we have a perpendicular line. And that's it. All right, let's try another one here. So this one is a little bit vague because there's not points that you can work with to use the formula. So instead, we have to use our head a little bit and kind of imagine what the slope would look like and the line would look like. So in this case, this says the slope is undefined. If you remember back in one of the journals, I said that when a slope is undefined, it is a vertical line. So I'm going to imagine myself that this slope is a undefined. So that means that the line is going to be vertical. And then the other slope here, the other line, has a slope of 0. So if you remember, if a slope is 0, that means it is a horizontal line. It's a flat line. And if you had two lines that, one was vertical and one was horizontal, that means you automatically would have a perpendicular line because they would eventually cross each other. So again, we get another perpendicular line. So anytime you have a line that's undefined, and the other one is a slope of 0, then you probably have a pair of perpendicular lines. All right, and the next one here, we get points again, so we have to use this formula. So let's start finding our first slope. So taking our y's, we're going to subtract them. 15 minus 3. 5 minus negative 2 is for the x. The top would end up being 12 and the bottom would end up being positive 7 because you would add the two numbers into those two negatives. I can't reduce this fraction because there's nothing that goes into 12 and 7 that are the same. So now I'm just going to do the second slope here. So I'm going to take my y, so 3 minus 1, 3 minus 1, and then the bottom would be 3 minus 2. So that would give me 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom, so that just gives me a 2. Okay, these two answers, these two slopes look completely different from each other. They're not the same, they're not reciprocals or opposite signs. So this is a case of neither. They are neither perpendicular or parallel. So that would be my final answer. All right, that's it for this video. I hope that helped. Bye, guys.